There is a particular cruelty in being invited to a table where your fate has already been decided. The cutlery is arranged, the wine is poured, and the only question left is which portion of your homeland each guest will take home. This was the table of the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. And into that beautiful gilded room in Versailles walked King Faisal ibn al-Hussein, a Hashemite prince, the son of Sharif Hussein of Mecca, a direct descendant by lineage and by bearing of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and more importantly, the leader of the Arab revolt, the king of Syria, who has presided over the Arab state that was then crushed by the French in 1920. He did not speak English. He wore the robes of the desert, not the suits of empire. And yet, Robert Lansing, the American Secretary of State, looked at him across that European hall and said, his voice seemed to breathe the perfume of frankincense. Not a metaphor of dismissal, but a confession of recognition. And here was someone who did not belong to the theater of the conference, precisely because he came from something older, something realer, something that predated all their maps. Let us be honest about Paris. It was not a peace conference. It was a distribution summit. Britain, France, Italy, and Greece arrived not as architects of justice, but as creditors of war. They arrived to collect the Ottoman lands as payment. They spoke of Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, self-determination, the consent of the governed, the rights of nations, but the way powerful always have spoken about principles. They use it as instruments to be deployed against enemies and folded away and tucked away when they threatened allies. The same thing happens today with same empires, with the United States administration too. The peoples of the former Ottoman lands, the text tells us plainly, were considered by most of these great diplomats to possess a poorly educated populace that was not prepared for democracy. They conveniently ignored their civilization, and they ignored the historical fact that elections have been taking place in the Ottoman Empire in the recent years, and that actually the Arabs formed a beautiful constitutional monarchy in Syria in 1918 with a beautiful constitution that actually is a better constitution than the United States Constitution, and this is by the statement of Elizabeth Watson in her book How the West Stole Democracy from the Arabs. So this is always has been the colonial thought, declare people unready, decide for them what they are ready for. Just like what Trump trying to do in Gaza today, and how ridiculous his board of peace, which is in reality a board of genocide, is. The peace conference also in Paris in 1919 was the same. So Faisal understood this. He did not come to Paris as an observer, but he came as a defender of the Arabs, without any title, without the immunity, but with something none of the great powers had, the moral weight of a people whose civilization had been ancient when Europe was still learning to write. And then came the dinner, January 20, 1919. The Americans, the Middle East experts, men who had never heard Arabic spoken as a living tongue of governance and law, check out episode 3 for more details, gathered to assess this prince who was invited to dinner, and they have been slow to take seriously. The American scholar who was the head of the American delegation accompanying Wilson, William Westermann, had initially dismissed Faisal, spreading a condescending rumor that T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, was Faisal's brain as well as his mouthpiece. He spread a story that Faisal had merely recited some Quran at a speech in Edinburgh, and Lawrence had translated it with whatever he wanted to say. But in the dinner came King Faisal, and he spoke. And Faisal always made an impact. He told them about receiving a card asking him to vote on whether Kaiser William II of Germany should be tried for war crimes. And instead of voting, he scratched out the Kaiser's name and wrote 4 names in its place: Jamal Pasha, Mark Sykes, Francois Picot, and John Gott, the men whose agreements had carved the Arab word like a butcher's diagram. Not William, these 4, because William had done to Europeans what these 4 had done to Arabs. And none of these Western experts had yet thought to put them on trial. That was a ridiculous thought. So it was a mirror, a reflection for them that what you are doing is similar to what you are trying the Germans for. The room went quiet when Faisal told this story. Then Faisal took a sheet of paper and wrote a single word on it and folded it, and he put it on the table. And he told his dinner companions that he hoped it would be a word that they would all agree with once they had heard what he had to say. So they gave him the floor and he started to speak. He told them the story of the Arab revolt, of the promises made by the British and betrayed, of the French who had told him that he could have no voice at the peace conference unless he accepted their domination of Syria, at the bullying that he has been exposed to. He told it as the historians record, the records of historians of that speech in a manner described as dramatic and wonderfully told. And then when he finished, he revealed the word to them, took it off the table and opened the paper and revealed the word, and the word was istiqlal, meaning independence. Not guidance, not assistance, not mandate, independence. These men, none of whom spoke Arabic, had agreed through the clever theater of a single word to the promise of Arab self-determination before they even understood that was what they were agreeing to. Westermann, who had weeks earlier called Faisal a puppet of Lawrence, declared that evening, "This is a remarkable man, really. Lawrence is not his brains at all. When he starts on principles, Faisal goes off like a 60 horsepower car," he said. And he declared, he said, quote, "I declare great is Faisal. I am a convert." Westermann became a huge fan of Faisal, and the whole Orientalist idea of Arab was shocked at that moment. Notice what happened. The prince, who had been dismissed as incapable of independent thought because an Arab Muslim prince could not, in the colonial imagination, the Orientalist imagination, be both devout and brilliant, had outmaneuvered a room full of American intellectuals without raising his voice, without borrowing their language. He was speaking Arabic and Lawrence was translating, and without surrendering his identity. He walked in with the full Arab desert Bedouin cloth. This is what dignity looks like when it refuses to apologize for itself. But here is the painful truth that must be said alongside this beautiful one. Faisal's brilliance was not enough. It could not be enough because the game was not about ideas. It was about armies and money. It was about cannons. And the Sykes-Picot secret agreement that had already been signed in 1916, that infamous Franco-British covenant that divided the Arab world between two empires as one divides a state between ours, the Paris conference was not where the decisions were made. It was where they were announced. So there was nothing to change at that point, although the truth was being revealed. So stay tuned for what Faisal did next, which we will discuss in the next episode. Thank you.